Hi there, it's Ashley. Today is day 9 of my extended water fast. Yesterday was a crazy day for me. I did too many chores. I did not take enough care for myself. Although I did take some breaks while I was gardening, it still was proved to be too much. I was pretty exhausted by the end of the day. The upside, of course, is that I had a very, very good sleep. Definitely the best sleep I've had since I've been fasting. But yeah, it was too much. I shouldn't have tried to do 6 or 7 hours worth of gardening chores. So that's just a little bit of advice that you got to remember to take it slow. My weight is down another pound today, so 17 pounds over 9 days, which is where I would expect to be. Even though it's higher than the average of 1 a day, it'll even out over the course of time. Today I want to talk about autophagy, which is my favorite part of water fasting. Aside from the weight loss, which is why most people get into fasting, autophagy is probably the second most important reason why people get into fasting. So autophagy, in a very literal translation, means the body's ability to eat itself. So, and that's exactly what it is. Now, I am not a scientist. I will not use scientific terms, but because I would probably be wrong. So I'm going to explain it in the way that I understand it and the way that I talk about it with people whenever I talk about autophagy. It is, so like what happens when we're fasting is that our body goes after cells that are useless to us, and it feeds on those cells. That's what is used for fuel. So instead of using food for fuel, we use, the body has this amazing way of knowing which cells are useless to us. And so useless cells to us would be, of course, fatty cells to an extent. I mean, eventually your body will tell you need to stop because it has to have some fat for health reasons. But and I can get to that. I can get to the body's natural warning signs that your fast is done. I'll do that another time. But for today, I want to talk about autophagy. And so our body will feed on fat cells, but it will also feed it, and in lots of cases, it will primarily feed or first feed on diseased cells. Now, you can read up on this. Certainly, I can't speak to this, but there's lots of theories out there that it will feed on things like cancerous cells and diseased cardiovascular cells. I've had lots of personal experiences with autophagy, and I'll give you some of those examples because I think it helps to illustrate what I'm talking about. So, in my first 4-day fast that I ever did, and I had done tons and tons of reading, so I knew about the concept of autophagy. But again, I hadn't experienced anything. I was brand new to fasting personally, although I knew lots about it. And I was sitting in my office at work, and I felt that I was bleeding on my tummy. I felt like I was bleeding. So I went into the washroom at work and looked in the mirror and like lifted my shirt and looked in the mirror, and there was no blood. So I went to the washroom and I was like, no, I'm definitely bleeding. And I came out and put my finger right where I thought I was bleeding, and I lifted my shirt to see where the blood was. And again, there was no blood. And so upon closer inspection, what I discovered was the tiny little scar from when I'd had one of the tiny little scars from when I'd had my gallbladder removed. And I only had my gallbladder removed in 2012. This experience happened in 2017, so the injury wasn't very old. But I would have bet my life savings that I was bleeding. And I wasn't. And then it dawned on me that it was autophagy, that what was happening there was that when I had healed from my gallbladder surgery and that scar from the incision was healing, I wasn't mindful of eating. I wasn't mindful of eating nutrient-dense foods. I was probably eating junk food or whatever, French fries. I probably had French fries. And so my body and those cells healed in a sick way. They didn't heal in a healthy, healthful way. They healed in a sick way. They did a good job healing, but they healed with whatever they were given, and what they were given was definitely not as nutrient dense as it needed to be. So I'll give you another example. So another example is when I did my 35-day fast. So by then I was a little bit more experienced, and I had a little bit of a better understanding of autophagy. And I had read that a lot of people, when they experience autophagy, the pain can be so intense that they'll present at the ER. They'll go to the hospital and they'll say, I've broken my leg, or I'm having a heart attack, and the doctor will say, there's nothing wrong with your leg, it's perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong with your heart, you're in perfect heart health. And people will, and that's not to say that you shouldn't present at hospital. I'm just saying that there are case studies where people have presented, and in fact there's nothing wrong, and it is just the body healing. So one night during my 35-day fast, and it was probably about halfway through the fast, I woke up and with intense pain in my pinky, like where it felt like somebody had hit my pinky with a hammer. And if I hadn't read what I knew about autophagy at that point, and if I hadn't had a couple of experiences with it, like hip healing, back healing, I had mastitis in my breast when I had my second daughter, who's 14 now, and I had autophagy related to some of my ducts from that mastitis, I believe. I had the experience with my scar from my gallbladder. If I hadn't gone through all of that, I would have gone to hospital. I would have sworn that I had broken my finger. But because I'd had those experiences, and because I knew what I knew, I realized fairly quickly after waking up with that pain that what I was experiencing was autophagy. And in my mind, it is just such a cool thing. So what happens is our body, looking for food, will go after these diseased cells. And what it does is it says, oh, I see that pinky finger in, whatever year it was that I would have been in grade 9 or grade 8. I was playing volleyball and I broke my finger playing volleyball. And that pinky healed incorrectly 30 years ago, and I'm going to go after those cells there, and I'm going to take away all of the yuckiness in those cells. So whatever disease was formed as a part of the healing there, because I probably healed with sour cream and onion chips and Cheetos or something. Whatever disease was formed when those cells were healing, I'm going to go and I'm going to eat that. And then I'm going to let the body replace it with healthy cells. And so it becomes where these cells are like, the visual in my mind is they're like yucky, diseased, shriveled sort of cells are now like these beautiful, clean, properly healed cells. And it's true, my finger feels better. I never really knew that there was some sort of persistent pain and a little bit of issue in that finger until it healed. And now that it's healed, and now that I went through that, there's no clicking anymore. It used to click all the time. There's no clicking anymore. There's zero pain. So it's quite amazing. I spoke briefly about my colon and the experience with my colon, and my doctor saying that it's so clean, and I know that that's as a result of autophagy and fasting. And I also had another experience that's probably a little more significant than a finger and a scar from a gallbladder surgery. As a result of my hernia and the acid that can happen as a result of that, I had some indications of something called short Barrett's, which is sort of a concern around precancerous. I didn't have short Barrett's, but they were concerned that it was starting to form, and that's precancerous cells in your esophagus as a result of acid in your esophagus. And so I was put on a high dose of Pantaloc, the medication that I take for my hernia, and I was told that I needed to revisit for an upper GI or whatever it is they do, where they look at your digestive tract or whatever it is up top. Sorry, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know all the words, but anyway, so I went last year after having fasted. So I actually only have to go something like every 3 years. So I had been prior to my extended fast, prior to starting fasting, and then I went again after having fasted. And when the doctor came back after that and reported to my primary care physician on the results, they said that what they saw of the warnings around short Barrett's prior to my fasting, they could no longer see. So my body had gone after those cells and healed those cells. And that for me is totally remarkable. And that's the kind of health thing that I'm talking about. You know, I could certainly not testify that it will cure cancer. I couldn't testify to any of that stuff because I don't know, and I'm not a scientist, and I haven't done any sort of study, so I'm just speaking about my personal experience. But what I do know is that prior to 2017, I had indications that my body was forming precancerous cells. Post 2017, I had indications that whatever was there is no longer there. And the only thing that I've done differently is started fasting. So look up autophagy and be mindful of it when you're fasting, because it happens. Oh, the other thing is it starts like early, like at 36 hours or something like that it starts. So I think it says like between 48 hours and 72 you're well into it. So you can start feeling some of those signs very early. So that's that's 2 days. That's 2 days to 3 days into it. You can start feeling some of those indications of autophagy. So watch out for them, because it's really cool, and definitely for me, ultimately the most important reason why we would consider fasting. Anyway, thank you so much. I'll be back tomorrow for day 10. Have a good day.